A big shout out to those people and those students who've tuned into this live feed via YouTube. So hi to everyone out there. Today what you're going to see is a presentation from Rose Bay Secondary College students who have been putting a lot of work into their World Parks Congress Fuse project. So to explain a little bit about what this project is and to introduce the students, I'm going to hand over to Dan Nichols, who works for the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Danielle, and good afternoon, everyone. Fuse is a program developed by the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service to connect New South Wales secondary schools to the World Parks Congress. It's a major conservation event being held here in Sydney in just 3 weeks' time. The World Parks Congress is held just once every 10 years by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN. The Congress will see conservation organisations like New South Wales National Parks, park managers, rangers, research scientists from around the globe coming to Sydney to discuss the aims of protected areas and the strategies and the agenda for protected areas and conservation management for the next 10 years. So it's a real major event for us and for everyone. In line with the Inspiring a New Generation theme or stream of the Congress, we've asked some schools from around New South Wales to take on some challenging tasks and investigate those tasks and bring their research, their inspiring solutions and their love stories about those challenges to Fuse, Yes, and they'll be also taking those to the World Parks Congress in 3 weeks and presenting that information to the delegates there. Stream 1 of the Congress, Reaching Conservation Goals, has been investigated by Rose Bay Secondary College. The students have been investigating the effectiveness of protected area management using the New South Wales National Parks State of the Park Assessment Program and data collected under the Management Efficiency Tracking Tool, or MET, from some global sites. They've been considering protected area management in relation to specific threats and where the current management is resulting in the impact of those threats increasing or decreasing as one of the ways of measuring that. Well-planned, managed and connected protected areas are seen as essential elements in biodiversity conservation. But despite a real increase in protected areas over the last 20 years, still we see species threatened and impacted. I'd like to introduce Rael, Katerina, Daniel and Raphael to detail their research, introduce their inspiring solution and their love story video. Give them a warm round of welcome, please.
Good afternoon. My team consists of 14 students ranging from Year 7 to 10. The team has a keen interest in conservation, the future of our environment and global events. Earlier this year, I visited the Kruger National Park in Africa and I saw the amazing wildlife and learnt about the realities of what was happening in these protected areas, particularly the impacts of poaching. Wanting my children to have the same awesome experience, this spurred my interest in conservation. As part of our study, we were given the rare opportunity to sit with Dr. Jane Goodall, the patron of World Parks Congress, and talk about conservation. In our study, we concluded that poaching, government ownership, the global ranger industry, and CITES can be part of the problem, and that Indigenous or private ownership could be more effective in managing an area. Dr. Jane Goodall showed us that it's not just about adults stopping the ecological threats like poaching, it's broader. It's about getting the youth conscious to include conservation in our everyday lives. One area of investigation in Stream 1 of this year's World Parks Congress is reviewing the effectiveness of protected areas management in achieving our conservation targets, such as those set in the HE biodiversity targets. We studied the management effectiveness assessment programs in Australia at the Royal National Park and in African national parks, with support from IUCN expert Stephen Woodley's Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool, or MET, developed by the IUCN. In our research, we investigated threatening processes in protected areas, the impacts of some major threats, how the threats are being managed, is their management effective, and what has been the community's involvement. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Katarina.
Thank you, Rael. Our research began with a Skype call to Canadian scientist Dr. Stephen Woodley to hear his thoughts about protected area conservation, management effectiveness, and his management effectiveness tool, MET. Dr. Woodley told us that we needed to find out if park managers were following a 6-step evaluation cycle. This meant finding out if their management strategies were focusing on outputs, which showed their effectiveness in protecting an area, and inputs, which meant that they were analysing the resources they needed to protect the area better. He spoke about how Africa's Kruger National Park had been a model of success for a long time, but had been drastically devastated by ongoing poaching. We left the Skype call intrigued. We realised that we need to contact experts within Africa's protected areas to get answers. We researched websites to get secondary data about Africa's protected areas, to identify what surrounded them and who was protecting them. Our investigation led us to the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, or IAPF, set up by Australian ex-military Special Forces Commander and Navy clearance diver Damien Mander, the Thin Green Line, and the Game Rangers Association of Africa. We found 60 Minutes documentaries about rhino and elephant poaching, activity books on the issue, social media websites, school video blogs on poaching, and media articles from the UK. We learnt a lot. We emailed the IAPF and the Game Rangers Association of Africa, and both groups filled out the MET, as did local rangers, operational managers, and local community leaders. Locally, we visited the Royal National Park and used the New South Wales Parks and Wildlife Services State of the Park Survey, which is a local example of MET. We reviewed their State of the Parks report from 2013 and met up with Ranger Lee Nolan. With Lee, we visited areas of disturbance in the park and gained an understanding of some of the management actions taken to manage the threats in the park. It seemed to us that management was overwhelmed and undermanned for the task. As for the general community, we developed a survey and distributed it through social media sites and emailed it directly to friends and family. The results were very surprising. We found that both areas of study had one common complaint: human intrusion, as the biggest threat to conservation needing better management. Both African and Australian experts listed hunting, killing, introducing and removing animals as the biggest threat, causing a loss of key species, which in turn had been modifying the natural ecosystems within the protected areas. Africa had been suffering from poaching by highly sophisticated and organised syndicates which seek to exploit Africa's resources, and the Royal suffers from littering, dumping, arson, camping, and introduced species like the deer and the fox. Many people surveyed didn't even know the threats were happening. We found very little positive community involvement in both parks, unless it benefited them. And finally, many protected areas were left virtually unmanaged, leaving them vulnerable. This meant that some 40% of the 120,000 global protected areas have either very low management or no management at all. It's in those places where poaching and illegal logging are the worst. In conclusion, we found that most management was not effective in protecting our global areas. I will now like to pass on to my colleague Daniel.
Thank you, Kat. In the past 20 years, despite a global doubling of declared protected areas in terrestrial, marine reserves and parks, biodiversity loss and species extinction continue to rise. Why? Because they are not properly managed, supported by governments or the community, even though everyone wants them to exist. To be effective, protected areas need to represent the world's ecosystems and be an adequate size to address the conservation of critical habitat types, biomes, and threatened species. But they must be managed effectively. They need resources to confront the ongoing challenges with park neighbours, threatening syndicates, corruption, and other illegal activities that impact a site's species and biodiversity. A management system for protecting areas should be normal business and consist of measuring inputs and outputs. But most management systems either are limited or focus on outputs. As for governments, it seems they do not like to spend money on protected areas. Part of the problem is that area management is not seen as an inherent part of protecting them. Where is the funding? Where is the community support? We are glad to conclude that the IUCN's Convention on Biological Diversity has identified 21 targets to help address the continued loss of worldwide biodiversity by 2020. Australia and Zimbabwe are parties to this and have responded by participating in activities to reach targets. In New South Wales, every 3 years, protected areas are being reviewed by the State of the Parks program. This is encouraging, but it's not enough. Globally, successful organisations like the International Anti-Poaching Foundation are paving the way as role models and innovators of effective management focusing on inputs such as drone technology, an online training academy called Command and Control for the reskilling of ineffective management, starting with operational security, and their endeavour to deliver a 23-nation panel of experts in anti-poaching to pool their resources, knowledge and capabilities together in conserving areas. But they need our help, as do all organisations which need funding to invest in better inputs to improve their management. It is up to us as a community to support these areas and programs. There is truly strength in numbers. To conclude is our final speaker, Raphael.
The tools developed by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the Convention of Biological Diversity, and the International Anti-Poaching Foundation are helping improve conservation managers. Clearly, protected areas need support by everyone to provide a sanctuary from the general exploitation of human intrusion on the environment. We must all fall in love with nature again. Conservation needs us to. Our team has come to the end of our IUCN journey with a clear understanding and message we would like you all to see, hear, but most importantly, support. This is our love story about nature and conservation, and we hope an inspiring solution that you will all undertake. We call this solution the Philanthropy Challenge.
Wow, thank you, Rose Bay Secondary College. That was a wonderful presentation and a very, very powerful love story video that you had there. So well done. We're now going to have some time
for that purpose, which is one way of certainly helping reduce the poaching, hopefully. But yeah, that's a really challenging one if people understood. But yeah, the supply, yeah, very good. You went out to Royal National Park and had a look at some of the damage or some of the threatening processes that are occurring out there, and you certainly mentioned those in your presentation, some of the negative impacts from park neighbours and so on. Did Lee Nolan talk much about the strategies that were in place to manage those, and did you see any evidence of those sorts of things? Yeah.
In Royal, we saw that, they let people, wander around the park in their own kind of way, how they'd like it. They put up signs saying, put this in the bin, do this, but it really wasn't working because there's one ranger in like a huge amount of park, and she can't manage
it out for each park so they understand what needs to happen. Thank you.
Okay, another question from the audience.
For the poachers who have families, children, feed.
You mentioned like the philanthropy challenge or something. I was just wondering how you were going to successfully implement this into schools, because I know at our school we have so many challenges like this come through, not just regarding environmental awareness, but so many other things, and a lot of them just get pushed to the side. How are you planning on successfully raising awareness towards this?
With the philanthropy challenge, that is actually a good question. It's hard. You can't really force it onto people, and obviously there are a lot of challenges out there. Most of you have probably done the ice bucket challenge. And it is hard to get something really out there. But once you get it onto social media, I guess then it can kind of take off because people ask their friends what it is. But it's more focusing, like, for example, if you can take it to your own school, and if you do it, you don't have to put it to whole schools. This is raising awareness, but it's also about if one person in every school were to do it, that would still be a lot of money, because you're really just like raising funds for doing different chores or something for an organization of your choice, as it said. And it's really that is hard. If there are that many challenges like at a school to do, it kind of gets drowned out. But there's not much you can do about that.
We actually did the philanthropy challenge at my school. I was part of it, and some people from our team were part of it. And the way we got people wanting to do it is we raised awareness. We spoke about it in assemblies. We actually had like a kind of not really a love story video, but something like telling people about poaching and even like the human side, negative, like water, the quality of water, food, all that, like it's the human side as well. And we just got awareness for people. We told them about it. It was a major thing, like at the time and not everyone did it. Like we made even a stall and got little boxes and put names of like certain animals and certain like issues that people would want to donate to, and they just walk up to the stall and add how much money they want to put in there for the cause that they want. They don't necessarily have to do the philanthropy challenge, but with the philanthropy challenge, our whole class did it, and everyone was up for it. No one was negative about it. It was something that we all wanted to do, and we all agreed on. And so, yeah, that's how it's about awareness, about telling people about it and getting them to want to do it.
Thanks, Katerina. Any more questions from the audience?
Great.
No?
Thank you, guys. And yeah, that's a terrific way to I guess, end our discussion. And if, as a result of that, people are motivated because of any particular other species they're fond of, rhinos or in Australia or on these sites, that's really what that connection, that love story is all about with nature. And